Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in just a moment. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, everyone. We're waiting for just a few more to join us, and we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I know several are continuing to join us, but we welcome you today for this important discussion. My name is Wendy Doyle, and I have the honor and privilege to serve as President and CEO of United We. I'm eager to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. First, we have Kim Olson, Senior Officer, the Pew Charitable Trusts. Kim joins us with extensive expertise on automated savings programs and financial solutions we believe that are extremely important to women. Kim provides state governments assistance with studying, legislating, and implementing these important programs. We are also joined by business owner Diane Reynolds, the CEO of Provoking Hope Recovery Support. Provoking Hope was an early adopter of the Oregon Saves program and has had employees saving through the program for nearly 5 years. She will be sharing more about the benefits of the program and impact to her employees in the state of Oregon. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief overview of United We. We are a nonpartisan organization dedicated to advancing all women's economic and civic leadership. Everything we do is rooted in data. We use evidence-based research to identify specific barriers to women across the nation and develop smart, practical solutions to overcome them. Over the last 3 years, we have published quantitative research studies that look at the economic and civic barriers of women in Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Our research shows economic barriers are dramatically impacting the lifelong financial health of women in the Midwest. These compounding barriers include pay equity, childcare, poverty, COVID, and societal expectations. Women's pay falls short to what men are making for the equal education levels that they both hold. Childcare responsibilities fall largely on women, and childcare opportunities are expensive and often simply unavailable. Single mothers often fall into poverty, which the social safety net often fails to prevent. In fact, 35% of single mother households live in poverty. Older women may face living alone with low income after the loss of a spouse. Among people over the age of 65, women in Kansas are almost 2 times more likely than men to live in poverty. And now, COVID-19 has really highlighted the many challenges faced by women, especially lower income women. Evidence suggests that women are leaving the labor force, and this could hamper future economic growth. Now that we've discussed and highlighted some of the key issues, specifically here in the Midwest and beyond, I'd like to turn it over to Kim to share more about automated savings programs and how this can be a strategy to help women. Thank you, Kim, and I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. And I think someone is controlling my slides, so I will just let you know when to change the slides over, but we'll start here. So, I work for the Retirement Savings Project at the Pew Charitable Trust, and we've been around since 2014 doing some research about retirement savings and the access gap. And I'd like to start by just framing the retirement savings problem for everyone. And I'll do that from 3 angles, from the workers, the employers, and the taxpayers. So first, Americans want to build a secure retirement, but tens of millions of Americans, it's nearly half of the private sector workforce, don't have access to retirement savings at work. But research shows that workers are 15 times more likely to save for retirement if they can use payroll deduction at their job. Now, however, many small businesses are unable to offer retirement benefits due to high startup costs and lack of administrative capacity. And then from this third angle of the taxpayers, if workers are not saving enough for retirement, many of them are going to need social assistance in their old age, and that will cost taxpayers billions of dollars a year. And as you can probably imagine, the problem is worse for those who can least afford it. So this affects those with lower levels of education, lower annual earnings, women, and people of color disproportionately. A few quick statistics on that. Almost 3 out of 4 workers with less than a high school degree do not have access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. 46 million workers with annual earnings below $50,000 lack access. About 64% of Hispanic workers, 53% of Black workers, and 45% of Asian workers lack access. And finally, very specific to this topic, 46% of men and 49% of women do not have access. So I think, the larger question for us at Pew is, what are we going to do about this? And we believe that an automated savings program could be the answer and help millions of people gain access to savings for their future. So what we're doing at the project is really just analyzing that, looking at how can we make sure that people have access to retirement savings and what is the best way forward. I'll go ahead and advance the slide. And what I want to do is show you a 2-minute video that explains this concept about what we're working on at Pew. I don't hear it. I don't know that the sound is coming through.
Okay, one quick second. Let me. I think we should be good now.
Emilio and Sarah love what they do for a living. Emilio works for a small company that makes squares. Sarah designs triangles for her job. The good news for Emilio is that his employer offers a retirement plan to its workers. Emilio has the peace of mind that he's saving for the future while he focuses on what he does best. Unlike Emilio, Sarah's employer doesn't offer a retirement plan. Sarah isn't alone. Tens of millions of private sector workers don't have access to retirement savings at work. And without saving for her future, Sarah, like others in her shoes, could find herself in real financial trouble at retirement age. Sarah's boss, Aretha, wants to offer a savings plan for her workers. But as a small business owner, she struggles to find the resources necessary to set up an affordable plan. But if Aretha's state establishes an automated savings program for companies, she wouldn't have to worry about any of that headache. These state programs are zero cost to the employer, and the setup is extremely simple. This is great for bosses like Aretha who want to retain and recruit all-stars like Sarah. Sarah can start saving automatically and opt out at any point. As a bonus, if she faces an unexpected expense along the way, she can use her savings tax and penalty-free. And the account moves with Sarah wherever her career path leads. With state programs like these, hard workers like Sarah are set up for long-term success, just like Emilio. And no matter what your job is, it sure feels good to know that your financial future is in great shape.
Wonderful. All right, thank you for advancing the slide. So states across the country are working on innovative solutions to these problems, as you see with this video. And more than a dozen states have passed legislation to create the kind of automated savings program we just noted. So if you look at the map, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Maryland, Oregon, these are all states with active programs. And then there's another half dozen that have passed legislation and they're working on implementation. And then there's kind of a smattering of maybe a half dozen states that are considering legislation this year. Now, what I think, I'll just take it back for a second because I think the video does a good job of explaining it, but I do want to break it down for a moment, which is what we're asking. Basically, we're saying every employer in a given state should offer something to their employees. It should not matter which employer you work for, whether or not you can save for retirement at work. So when a state implements a program like this, they say to the employers who already offer something, you don't have to do anything. But it's the employers that don't offer a plan of any type that they are the ones who have to facilitate this program. And it is a requirement that they facilitate. That can be a little difficult in certain parts of the country. The idea that the government is asking for a requirement that employers do this, but I mean the reasoning is sound, and that's because we want to make sure all employees have access to saving. We don't want that to be dependent on their employer, and we want to make sure that employers are able to, recruit and retain their employees, right? So we're just trying to make an even playing field across the country for how this works. Now, basically the only requirements are that the employer register for the program, they upload their employee information, and they facilitate the payroll. That's it. It's a really minimal and it's no cost to the employer. And on the employee side, this is where it gets interesting because this is using behavioral science concepts to take what we know about human psychology and put them in practice. So what we know is that people have a tendency to procrastinate when they don't want to make a decision or if the decision seems really difficult. And if we're honest, then something like investing is a very difficult decision. You have to decide where the money is going to go, where it will be invested, how much you're investing, all of those pieces. And most people are just not financially savvy enough to want to go out and make those decisions on their own. So these programs automatically enroll these employees into saving. If they do nothing, they get to start saving. And they start saving at default rates where they don't have to make any of those decisions. And the great part is it's totally voluntary because you can opt out at any time. I'll go ahead and advance the slide. Okay, so this is how things are going. We've only had programs since 2017. The first state to implement a program was Oregon, which I helped stand up back at that time. So, we're still in early days, but if you look at this program data, it is so amazing that you're taking this group of individuals in the United States who weren't saving at all and seeing these kinds of numbers. So we have over 150,000 employers who have this program now. We have over 650,000 people who are saving in accounts, and they've saved over $700 million in 5 years. And again, from people who were not saving because they had no access. So I think it's just a really exciting concept, and knowing that so many people are able to start saving and getting ahead with their financial future by doing nothing. They didn't have to take any action at all. They just got to start saving. I'll note to the opt-out rate at the bottom. This is back to that original idea that this is totally voluntary. Yes, you're being automatically enrolled, but people can say no. And so 35% of people are saying, no. And we've done some surveys at Pew about why that is. Some people say, I don't have the money to save right now. Makes total sense. There are others who say, I save at another job, or my spouse is doing the saving at their job. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why people don't plan to participate. But it's a really healthy number of people, 65%, who are participating and have made up this the $727 million figure. Next slide. Okay, so again, we're Pew, so we do a lot of research. I will just touch on the research about employers and employees. So in 2017, we did a small business survey, and we just asked businesses across the country about a hypothetical program that did what I just explained. And 87% of businesses said they would be in support of such a program. And we actually saw this in practice in Oregon. Now, the way these programs have been implemented is usually by some sort of deadline. So the employers have to start facilitating by a certain date. In Oregon, we saw 1 in 4 firms sign up at least 90 days early. And that tells us that people are excited, that they want to give their employees the opportunity to save, and they've been wanting to have a retirement benefit, but they just haven't been able to do it. So, we definitely have looked into the program experience. The smaller employers seem to be more satisfied because they're able to provide something. They're reporting few or no out-of-pocket costs and few or no employee concerns. So, I think it's just been a win-win, both for the employers and the employees. Next slide. And, on the worker side, we're excited that people are saving. I mean, I think that's the most important part of this, because they're getting ahead and they're thinking about their future. This second bullet point about the early pandemic withdrawals, I think, is actually a really interesting point, because the way that people are saving is into a Roth IRA account. And so that's an individual retirement account that people can have that brings in their after-tax income. And why that's important is because in a Roth IRA, when you put contributions in, you can access those contributions at any time. So people are actually using these accounts in a dual use fashion. And we're kind of seeing that across the board, that sometimes people are using them like an emergency savings account. And some people are using them for retirement, and that's okay. I mean, really, from our perspective, it's really just about getting people saving in a more, or I guess a less financially precarious situation. So what we saw in Oregon was that right after the pandemic hit, there was a spike in withdrawals. Like, when people weren't being paid and before the stimulus checks started coming, there was a spike in withdrawals from the program, but then it went right back to normal. Like, no, people didn't leave the program, they didn't stop saving. They didn't keep taking a bunch of money out. Like, they used it for that one purpose of trying to get themselves over that hump, and they just kept saving, which I think is really exciting news for the program and the longevity of people's intent to save. In terms of the participant experience, we looked at the program in Illinois, and we found that overall people are satisfied. I mean, I think these numbers, 62% satisfied, 34% neutral, and only 5% dissatisfied. I'm not sure how often those of you on the call have interacted with government programs, but it's kind of unheard of to get those kinds of numbers with most government programs. So, we're very happy with what we're seeing there. And then we're also seeing people say that they feel more financially secure. Not everybody. I mean, I think there are some people who probably, are just in a financially precarious situation. But for, these numbers over the course of just the last 2 years, 38% of people feeling more secure just says that they're moving in the right direction. And then finally, one interesting piece for this audience is that at least in Illinois, more female workers were eligible for the program, but fewer females participated. And so we're kind of interested in digging into why that's the case. But in terms of the eligibility, we believe that has largely to do with the fact that most times a part-time job does not offer a retirement benefit. And so there are many more females who tend to have part-time jobs. And when we're implementing a program like this, we're filling this gap of workers who traditionally just didn't have anything offered to them. Next slide. Okay, and I just want to dig into the nerdy numbers really fast about taxpayer burden, because I think this is also kind of, when we look at the program, both from the employer and the employee perspective, it is a win-win, but I also believe it's kind of a win for the taxpayer as well, because the cost of doing nothing and pretending like this isn't a problem, that people not having retirement savings isn't a problem, is not it's not going to work, because you're just kicking that can down the road, and we're going to have to pay for it at some point as taxpayers when people age into poverty and need more social supports. So Missouri specifically, there's 887,000 private sector workers who don't have access to anything right now. And that's 41% of all working age women in Missouri. So it's a very big number of people that are basically going to retire into poverty if we don't do something to make sure that they have the ability to save. That last bullet point is, it's a preliminary number, but what we've done is do a fiscal impact study with a group called eConsult Solutions that looked at what the cumulative costs of basically this demographic that was getting older. So we're having more people age into the retirement age, fewer young people to replace them, and then trying to deal with like the additional social assistance spending. So for Missouri alone, the 20-year cost of this additional social assistance spending, like Medicaid, will be $3.4 billion. That's billion with a B, so it's not an insignificant sum for the taxpayers to try to shoulder. Next slide. And then on the next slide, I just did the numbers for Oklahoma and Kansas, since I know that those are places that United We is also active. It's very similar numbers. So 640,000 people in Oklahoma, with 52% of all working age women. And in Kansas, 443,000, which is 45% of all working age women. So this is just, it's a problem that permeates basically the entire United States. We can't stick our head in the sand and pretend like it's not a problem. And I think something like this, that is a public-private partnership that has already been proven and has an evidence base across the country in different programs, is something that people can get behind, can make sure that we have retirement savings for everybody. And I'm happy to take any questions after Diane has a chance to talk. I'll just go ahead and leave it there.
Thank you so much, Kim, for the overview, for the data. Just very important to highlight the barrier, but opportunity for us here in the Midwest. Now we are going to turn to really kind of bring this opportunity to life by talking with Diane Reynolds. And as I mentioned in the introduction, Diane is the CEO of Provoking Hope Recovery Support, located in the state of Oregon. So welcome, Diane. Thanks for joining us. And we have a couple of questions for you. And so the first question is, can you tell us just about Provoking Hope Recovery Support, and what types of populations does your company serve?
So Provoking Hope is about almost 13 years old, and it is a what we call a wraparound service. We have about 40 employees, and wraparound services for individuals who have struggled through addiction. So all 40 of the employees are in various stages of their recovery process from substance use disorders. It's a woman-owned organization. It's a nonprofit, and that's kind of it. We work with the community of addiction, and we go into the courthouses, we go into the jails. People come through our front door, and we have certified recovery mentors, otherwise known as peer support specialists, who have been trained. And the greatest gift they bring to the table is that they are individuals with lived experience of the struggle of getting clean from drugs and alcohol.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Diane. And Diane, if you are able to turn your camera on so we can see you, it would be helpful. And while Diane is doing that, just a reminder, if you have questions, feel comfortable dropping them in the chat or the Q&A section. We can see you. Welcome again. Welcome again. You have been in business for 13 years. So prior to the introduction of Oregon Saves, had you ever considered getting a retirement plan for your employees?
Well, I certainly had that at the top of my thought process. I did not have that at the top of my financial process, being a small business starting out, and also being a nonprofit organization, and relying on contracts to help pay for the employees' hourly wages, left us with, I mean, that's what our contracts were paying for. They were not paying for a savings or a 401k or a 403. And it for, from the beginning, from 2011 until Oregon Saves approached us, we wanted to be able to do something. We just simply didn't have the finances to do something for our employees.
And I know that you are not alone, Diane, in that feeling that a lot of employers, would like to be able to offer that opportunity, as a recruitment and a retention strategy, but just, the financial commitment is just, not in the business plan at the moment. My next question, you were an early adopter of the Oregon Saves program. So why is that?
Well, the Secretary of Treasury made a visit to our organization, the personalized attention, and gave us the rundown, very similar to what Kim just gave to everybody who's on this meeting. And I was just so excited to be able to think that we could offer this. It wasn't, we could participate. They could make the decision, yes or no. And there were so many who had by that time been employed by Provoking Hope for, probably 5 or 6 years. And so their whole outlook about life and the lived experience that they were currently in dictated to them that they needed to begin to save. That was not a concept prior to coming to work at PH. They didn't have that on board because they had come out of these backgrounds and their lived experiences where that wasn't a deal. So it was just, I was very, very excited. The idea that it was just a simple matter of adding it to the payroll, and our payroll person would just, that would just happen automatically. We could give the hiring people could be given the option. This is something we offer. Do you want to do it right now? Do you want to pick it up? It was just easy street. It was so easy, and it was so powerful for me personally, but also for especially the females, the women who were already employed and had, a little bit of tenure with the organization.
So you just mentioned how easy it was to implement. So it sounds like that was a pretty seamless process.
Yes,
for your organization.
It was very seamless, and they worked with our payroll finance department, and she said it was just so simple. It was just like adding. It was very similar to just doing payroll, and knowing that you have these taxes that you have to participate in as an employer. So it was she herself would say it's just so easy.
Great.
So easy.
Fantastic. Good to hear. So what impact has the program had on your employees?
Well, I'll speak for myself first. You know, I've been saving ever since the beginning has started, and I have a 403 through another organization that I was employed by, and I just have kept that open and let it gain interest. So I had a little bit of concept myself for how this would work. But, you know, for the first time in my life, I can say, you know, I've got about $5,000 sitting over there in my Oregon Saves IRA program. And it happens automatically. I don't miss it. I don't see it. I don't, you know, it's not like I feel like it's being taken, you know, like I have gotten it and then I have to take the action step. Exactly what Kim was saying. You know, I just haven't missed it. It just comes out like the taxes do. And so that's my own personal experience with it. And like I said, for the first time in my life, I have something substantial that's building for, if nothing else, for when I leave this world. Um, and but for others, like I have one female employee whose husband is disabled, so she works and she works part-time. So she saves it year to year, and that's how they pay their property tax. So she builds that up, and right before property tax, she withdraws whatever the tax bill is, and then she saves for the next year. So it's become a lightened burden for her in her finances. She doesn't have to think about putting the money away, and she doesn't have to think about where is this money going to come from when her property taxes are due. It's just there and she can request it and she gets it easily and can then pay her tax bill,
That's
her
a
property
great,
tax bill.
that's a
Yeah.
great example. Good.
And the other one that I guess I would highlight would be the actual financial officer of the organization who oversees the payroll. So for her, the first time in her life, I think she's like 57, the first time in her life that she has a savings account, and she is building and leaving that alone because she's never owned her own home. And her goal is to have enough in there to put a down payment on a small home for herself. And she's single and she's just so excited. You know, she's in that process of looking and checking in with the mortgage lenders. And she has said to the other employees, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I could purchase a home and have a down payment. So those are two pretty powerful stories.
Very inspirational. So what does this mean to you as the employer to be able to, you know, to offer this program? What's the impact to your organization?
Well, the impact is retention for one thing. It's a little bit different than you know, the common 401 or 403, but it's an incentive for people to stay. The other thing that I love about it is, and maybe this is true in all the other ones, I don't know, but when and if they leave, they take that with them to their next employer. So that is just such, in my mind, that is just such a powerful concept. And it fits right in with our particular mission for our employees, because what we say about our employees is that we want to bring them in, raise them up, equip them, and then send them out. So in sending them out, if we have worked with them to get a savings account started through Oregon Saves, they take that with them. And it's, you know, it's such a powerful, I don't know, the concept is just so powerful to me that as we send them out, we send them with this account that they were able to get started working for us.
It's great. Diane, thank you for sharing your story, for you personally benefiting, but also for your organization and your great work that you do with your mission. I'd like to invite Kim back into the conversation. We have a couple of questions in the chat that I'd like to address. So the first one is from Kristen, and Kristen, thanks for joining us today. For families experiencing poverty who may be concerned about benefits, cliffs, or asset-based eligibility requirements that may prevent low-wage workers from saving, are there any considerations related to implementation of this program that we should keep in mind? So Kim.
I really appreciate this question because the wonkiness goes to my heart, because this is, I had the exact same question when I was helping Stand Up Oregon Saves. I said, you know, is there going to be a problem for some segment of this population to accumulate savings? And so I went and kind of dived into, you know, what was going on in Oregon specifically. There, I'm sure many of you are, you know, aware of Prosperity Now as an organization. They have a great scorecard that tells you how, you know, what's going on in different states on different issues. And so I took a look and saw that for us in Oregon, we still had an asset limit around TANF. And so I ended up drafting a piece of legislation that was successful, that was able to take retirement accounts out of what would be put into that calculation for our TANF asset limits. So, and it was actually kind of, I would say, a little bit amusing, because I had a back and forth with the Legislative Council at that time where they're like, no one has ever been tossed off TANF for retirement savings account. And I was like, yet. Like we're going to see an explosion of people accumulating assets in these accounts that they're going to either be able to use for their emergency savings, or they're going to be able to use for their retirement savings. And we don't want people to have to choose poverty now or poverty later. That is just not a choice we should be asking people to make. So what I would say is that, you know, as you're looking at the individual state that you're in, it would be really important to take a look and see, do those asset limits still exist for things like TANF or LEHEAP? And if they do, is there a carve out for retirement savings or not? And then, you know, as you're going through the process of drafting legislation, trying to make sure that this won't be a problem for people in the future.
That's great. Thank you, Kim. Really good question. We have another question that is really a good one. What is the difference between the automated savings program and a 401k other than the employer contribution?
Right. Okay. So like I will say this, an automated savings program is basic. A 401k is just a better option. And I think if we could get every single business in the United States to offer something more robust, like a 401k, 403b, with an employer match, all of the bells and whistles, that would be a better choice for everybody. However, this is not the case in the United States right now, and very much so when we're talking about small businesses who just don't have the ability, be it financial or just resource-wise, to offer a really robust retirement option. So what we've done with an automated savings is basically fill this gap for the period of time where someone can't offer something more robust. These are IRAs, so they have a different contribution limit. So IRAs have a $6,500 contribution limit, whereas a 401k has, I think it's $22,500 right now. But if I'm very honest, like the population of people we're talking about, very few of them max out a $6,500 account in any case. Like we're not seeing a whole lot of people pushing that limit to begin with. Most people are getting, you know, between $1,000 to $3,000 into an account during the year. So those assets, like, you know, the higher level limit is not really stopping people, you know, or causing them any harm at that time. The other change or the difference would be who sponsors the plan and plays the role of fiduciary. So when you have an employer-sponsored plan, that employer has to go out and solicit, or, you know, could be solicited by a third-party financial organization to start a plan, and then they pay fees to have that plan with the third-party financial institution, but they are the plan sponsor, which there's a lot of administrative paperwork and administrative pieces that come with being a plan sponsor and fiduciary. When you go to an automated savings program, the fiduciary, the plan sponsor, is actually the state. So we don't put that onto the employers. The employers have no role to play. They cannot match. They cannot make changes to like what kinds of investment options are available or where things are going to be invested. All of that's taken care of by the state in partnership with with a private program administrator and a private investment manager. So I'm always the first to say a 401k would be a better option, but it's not feasible for all businesses. And so we just have to make sure that there is an option available so that everyone has the opportunity to save.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. Other questions? Any other questions that you may have to ask Kim or Diane? And let's see. This is from Kellyanne. Hello, Kellyanne. I just heard House Committee substitute for House Bill 155. This is in Missouri, presented by Representative O'Donnell in the Missouri State Veterans, Military Affairs and Pensions Committee. Is this something that United We is working on? The Pew Research was quoted, pretty cool and quite timely. Thank you, Kellyanne. This is something that we are taking a look at for sure. You know, we see this as an opportunity here in the Midwest, with Kim's research and data and expertise working with other states, we see this as having some potential. But thanks for joining us today and for pointing that out. And we love your support on this too.
I would like to make a couple notes because there is actually legislation in Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri. It's just not the legislation that I was talking about today. So the Oklahoma and Kansas bills, they are what we would call a voluntary IRA bill. So the difference is that, yes, it would have like the automatic enrollment piece, but it doesn't have basically the requirement on employers to offer it. So the difference really is that if you don't require the employers to offer the program, it's not that much different than what we have going on right now. Because the employer has to take the time to do the work to make sure that it happens. It just the chances that you're going to get the take-up rate that you would need for a program administrator to bid on your RFP and take that business and start that program is just very low. So we just at Pew we don't recommend voluntary programs for this reason, just because both that it's going to be harder to stand up the program, but also that we just don't believe that it should be dependent on where you work as to whether or not you can save. And on the Missouri bill that you just mentioned, that is a bit of a different flavor of bill. It is voluntary, but it creates a multi-employer plan, and it gets very into the nitty-gritty here. But the difference is that a multi-employer plan usually means that a bunch of employers band together, and then there's kind of one fiduciary sponsor of this plan together, as opposed to all these individual employer sponsors if you had your own plan. Again, though, it's a voluntary bill. People would the employer would have to decide to opt in and do that kind of work. And so it would still leave likely a huge swath of Missouri businesses and a huge swath of Missouri employees without a way to save.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments to drop into the chat? All right, Kim, any final words you would like to offer our audience today?
Yeah, I'm just so excited to see how many people showed up. And I think that this kind of super wonky policy change is hard to explain without having these kinds of touch points, because I think particularly when it comes to retirement savings policy, it is it's urgent, but it's never an emergency. And I think that it's the same way that saving for your future self is hard because you have needs now, and putting things aside so that your future self has this money is hard. So I just really applaud everyone who came to learn about this, and I hope that you're able to make some headway in the Midwest on these programs, because I would hate to see only certain states have access and leave others behind. I think that it would just be really great to see it kind of across the country.
Thank you so much, Kim, for joining us today, sharing this important information. And a big thank you to Diane for sharing, bringing it to life and sharing your personal story and progress with your organization in Oregon. We, thank you too for all of the good questions in the chat and for the discussion. Now it's time to take action, and we invite you to raise awareness of automated savings programs in your state, wherever you may be joining us. As you know, the question from Kellyanne, this is something that United We is really taking a look at, and we've heard from women that this needs to be a priority. So we invite you to raise awareness, but you will receive after this event a template letter that you see here on the screen that you can copy, paste, or edit to send to your own policymakers wherever they may be. This letter will be emailed to you to the email address that you registered with. And if you have any questions about this letter or how to navigate or how to send this, please let us know. Feel comfortable in reaching out to info@united-we.org, and we'll drop that into the chat, and that's info@united-we.org. Lastly, I encourage you to join the United We Network. We have many more events on the calendar, plus several other ways that you can support and advance women, including starting your own civic leadership journey. And you can learn more about that at united-we.org. A big thank you again to Kim, to Pew for this incredible research, to Diane for sharing the story, and thank you all for taking the time to join us as well. We hope you have a great afternoon.